honor of having a very eminent keynote speaker and two very distinguished discussants. But before I introduce them to you, I'd like to make one or two introductory comments. And perhaps after that, I'll let you know a little bit about the three gentlemen. And then I would like to go over the agenda a little bit. We will try to wrap it up by 9 o'clock. The Ukrainian crisis has seen its implications across the globe. South Asia or Bangladesh has not been spared. We all see the rising inflation, the fuel crisis. What is also very gloomy is we don't know where it is going, how long this crisis will continue, and what will be the impact, not immediate, but even medium term and long term. Having said that, one major concern is, let me talk about Bangladesh. Bangladesh had made amazing economic success. It's an economic success story, both in terms of the GDP growth, but also importantly about poverty reduction, about food security issues. Our moderate level of poverty was about 20%, extreme poverty about 12-13%. The question is the graph has always been going downward. Are we seeing a reversal and becoming a new shape? So there's a huge concern about food security, especially amongst the very poor. There are other implications. The gender issue. Are women going to be more adversely affected than men? Those are issues I leave it up to the experts to talk about today. But allow me now to just go ahead and say a few words about the three resource persons. The three resource persons are Dr. Sattar Mandal, Emeritus Professor, Agricultural Economics, Bangladesh Agriculture University, Bangladesh. Indeed, it's an honor to have him here, sir. Professor Mandal is, he led the formulation of important national policy documents, such as the Agriculture Policy 1999. Professor Mandal has also served as the president of Bangladesh Agriculture Economics Association. In recognition of his extensive contribution to the field of research and policy discourse, in the broad field of agriculture and rural development, the government of Bangladesh conferred on him the second highest civilian award, known as the Ekushe Padak in 2022. Again, sir, thank you for being here. The two discussants are Mr. Fazlur Rahim Khan, who is the managing director of the Islam Group Agro-Business Division, one of the largest and diversified agro-related company of Bangladesh. Currently, he is serving as the president of the Bangladesh branch of the World Poultry Science Association. As a footnote, I know Mr. Khan, about 3 decades now? Finally, I'm pleased to mention that Mr. Rajesh Singh, an old friend of the Frederick Naumann Foundation, he will come online as the second discussant from India. As he puts it in his resume, let me quote, he says he's a farmer by birth, manufacturer by chance, and entrepreneur by choice. He's the founder of Farm Internet Solutions, a startup integrating various intermediaries in the food trade. So we will hear from both these gentlemen after Dr. Sattar Mandal's presentation. So what is the agenda? Following my brief introduction, we will hear from a very honorable member of the parliament, Mr. Knut Geschau. Did I get that right, Karsten? He's a German politician for the FDR, and since 2021, a member of the Bundestag, the German parliament. He's the former chairman of the board of the German Foundation for World Population. In fact, very recently, he was in Dhaka for the first time last month. It's an honor to have Mr. Gasho attending our program, but he will come online and it will be a tape of remarks from that gentleman. What we want to do is the following. We'll hear from Dr. Mandol, first our Honorable MP. Following that, Dr. Mandol's keynote speech, then comments from the two discussants, and finally, the floor will be open for a Q&A session, the question and answer session. At which point, I'm requesting my esteemed guests today, please ask questions. You can ask questions both to Dr. Mandol, Sattar Mandol, as well as to the discussants. Thank you very much. Let us, thank you. Let us watch the video now. Video.
Good evening. First, I would like to congratulate Friedrich Naumann Foundation Bangladesh for their 10 years anniversary of their Dhaka project office. The foundation has been working on 3 thematic areas in the country: free market, economy, good governance, and digital transformation. Collaborating with local partners in Bangladesh, the foundation implemented projects on economic policy reforms through research and advocacy, promoted the Right to Information Act and citizen participation in local governance through trainings and dialogues, and supported the growth of entrepreneurs, startups, and e-commerce through trainings and hackathons. The Friedrich Naumann Foundation Bangladesh is also actively working with partners in providing civic education on freedom and liberal values among urban educated youth. I hope the foundation can carry on the impressive work they are doing and wish them all the very best for the future. Having a stronger presence in Bangladesh is important for the foundation. It is good that the foundation strengthens its visibility. And with that note, I would like to welcome you all to the discussion on the Ukrainian crisis and food security implications for Bangladesh and South Asia as a part of the anniversary program. The invasion of Russia into the Ukraine has serious food security implications for Bangladesh and its South Asian neighbors. The economic fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic, followed by the war in Ukraine, which acts as the world's breadbaskets, has cumulative adverse economy effect in this region. The sudden rise of energy prices, as well as disruptions in the supply chain, have led to higher inflation, especially of food prices. The development affects all but poorer parts of society most. During my recent trip to South Asia, I have seen with my own eyes how the invasion of Russia into Ukraine has hit the people to Bangladesh and other countries of South Asia. But this war not only affects this region, it has rippled through the whole world. Here in Germany we see rising inflation due to the conflict. During my trip to South Asia 2 weeks ago, I also visited Bangladesh. I felt the pride that Bangladesh will soon not longer belong to the group of least developed countries, but to the group of medium-income countries. However, I all experienced and saw the problems and tasks Bangladesh is dealing with, environmental problems such as smog, working conditions, quality standards, but also poverty, climate migration, and women's rights are among them. In my conversations, I tended to encounter optimism and hope. I feel that Bangladesh is on a difficult but good path. Critical policy strategies need to be developed and implemented to address the topic of food security in the immediate, mid and long term. I hope the discussion and the speakers will provide us with valuable insights of the food security issues caused by the war in Ukraine, and will be able to highlight ways out of the current situation for Bangladesh and South Asia. Thank you and greetings from Germany.
I have the distinct privilege and honor to invite Professor Dr. Sattar Mandal to speak on behalf of, to speak on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Nazmul. The distinguished chair, the special guest, His Excellency, the Deputy Head of German Mission in Bangladesh, Jan Janowski, and Parliament member Knut Gershaw, our colleagues from different diplomatic missions, FNF members and partners, distinguished panelists, friends from academia and research, very good evening. I feel very honored to be here this evening to join you, the FNF, while you are celebrating your glorious 10 years of presence in Bangladesh. I am very proud that I could be a little part of it in your celebration of this historic moment tonight. I feel very honored that any event which relates to German initiative in terms of development or education attracts me because I have had a very long academic contacts and working relationships with our academic faculties at the Rhine-Boal University in Kleve. So that's why when Nazmul approached me, I gladly accepted, having known that this FNF is supported by Germany. Okay, let me come back to our business. I have been asked to present a keynote paper. I won't claim that what I am going to say constitutes any keynote paper. What I would at best say some introductory remarks to highlight some of the key points that have arisen due to the global crisis caused by Russia and Ukraine war. I try to be very brief. What I would love to is a feedback, lively feedback from you, especially our young friends who are here and who constitute, I estimate shows there were roughly 50% of the audience here who are in their 30s, 40s. So they are the ones really who have the next 40, 50 years of life, and they are the major stakeholder to act, react, solve, and reorganize their thoughts in order to bring in a better world, better poverty and hunger-free world. And that's why this subject today, this food security, is so important, especially for Bangladesh. I echo FAO's latest Food Outlook report, which says that some countries, due to this crisis, may be forced to reduce input application, almost inevitably resulting in lower agricultural productivity and lower food availability. And then within quote, negative repercussions for global agricultural output and food security are likely to extend into 2023. So with these remarks, let me now begin my few key points. Where are we? Is anybody helping me on my slides? Yes, of the few? Let me begin with showing some overall scenarios in terms of, okay, let me acknowledge, first of all, and introduce to you, I have two colleagues of mine with me. One is Professor Dr. Mehe Zebunnesa Rahman, who is a faculty at the North-South University. Yeah, Mehe, can you stand up? Okay. And then the second one is Sajjadur Rahman Sarkar, who is a young colleague of mine from Bangladesh Agriculture Research Council, and I have acknowledged him as my data support assistance, really. So let us go forward. Okay. Let me begin with this economist passion, the love graphs. It's difficult, I'm very sorry for those who cannot see from behind, but let me tell you that this graph is about the price of crude oil, which seems to be the driver at the moment of the global economic growth, really, which has been thwarted very seriously. And if you look at this graph, it started rising, the crude oil prices, from 2020, the beginning of 2020, but only recently it has been escalated due to these crises, global crises. So that's the one thing. The second one is the fertilizer. Why crude oil was so important? Let me go back. Why crude oil is so important? Now Bangladesh. Let me deal with some statistics. Zaidi bhai, you are here, please bear with me. There are 1.4 million shallow tube wells which withdraw water from the ground to irrigate our major food crop, boro rice. There are 200,000 low-lift pumps which pump water from the rivers and canals to irrigate this paddy. There are 35,000 deep tube wells which draw water from the ground to irrigate. And the major fuel for running these pumps is these diesel as a part of these crude oil really. That's why for Bangladesh, the crude oil is the lifeblood for agriculture. And given the present situation, we are anxiously looking forward to when this crude oil price, that started dropping, but you can see at the later part, in November, September, it started rising up again really. It's a monthly report. So that's why it is so crucially important for us really. Okay, this fertilizer, the another inorganic chemicals, which is again the major nutrition, plant nutrition for irrigated rice, for any rice. And you can see the price, how fast it is rising in the recent months and recent years. And you have seen that our agriculture minister, my friend, Dr. Razzaq, already made an appeal to the Ministry of Finance, asking how many? 46 crores taka, meaning 460 million Bangladesh taka as a subsidy for fertilizer. The present budget allocates only 1.6 crores, and it's about 3 times higher budgetary support that the ministry is asking to support this fertilizer, let alone the question of diesel, whose prices has gone up. So I am talking about a life and death issue. Please don't read me that I am emotional. I am trying to be objective, that I leave it to you, and I would like to hear from you, your feedback. So that's, let me move on. Okay, that was the overall, but this is the last 20 to 20 seconds really. It's the same explanation that I have gone. But let me emphasize here that urea, which one is the pointer? একটা আছে না ওই করে ওই কোনটা দিলে যেন লাল আসে একটা না লালটা আসে বাট এখানে দেখছি না এনিওয়ে সরি না ওটা আসছে ওই হ্যাঁ কোনটা Okay, never mind. Look at this urea, which is a green color. The urea prices shoot up in 2021, middle of 2021. And then it has fluctuated. And then currently it has been stabilized a little bit. But then we would like to see that all these fertilizer prices continues to decline in the international market, or at least stabilizes at the present level. That is also very important for accelerating our main food production. Bangladesh Rice Research Institute, our national prime institute for developing varieties, has a plan of doubling rice production. The major driver of doubling that rice production is chemical fertilizer, rational, balanced use of fertilizer. So this pricing again is so important for us. Okay, now let us look at this average price of grain and soybean meal. Sorry, it's made there, it's meal. Look at this rice prices in the international market. It's more or less remaining at the same level. Good thing is that we are the rice eater and consumer, and international price is okay, is okay at the moment. But look at wheat. Look at wheat, the red line, how these prices has gone up. But Bangladesh has got some concern about it because of urbanization and because of these out-of-home eating with the income growth of Bangladesh. These fast food and then bakeries industries are all dependent on wheat import, really. I have something to say about the way out. But then look at also the other grain, like this maize, which is a key, vital input, really, for our animal feed industry, both fishery and the livestock industry. And feed prices rising so quickly and so fast that it has become a very difficult. About 70,000 layer farms, or maybe how many more altogether? Maybe over 100,000 broiler and layer farms together are facing very tough time really to continue with their production of eggs and broilers and other things. So that is a matter of concern for us. Huh? And also aqua. Okay. They will supplement me in here. Okay, this is the same thing in the recent years. Now, world cereal market trend. Look at it. And I am using this from FAO Food Outlook. Look at this, rice, wheat, and coarse grain. In rice, both production and supply, and together with trade and end stock, there are negative signs really at the end of this year. At the end of 2000, that was in 2022. But the projection is that there will be 2.4% reduction in global production of rice, supply will shrink, trade will shrink, end stock will shrink, though moderately, but that gives you a signal that what are the ones that we have to be careful. Wheat production has a positive signal globally, and so is the supply. But in terms of trade, because the prices are going up and there are dollar crises, so trade or the volume of transaction in the international market will go down really. Not very good for the wheat producing and exporting country in the long run. Okay, and then coarse grain, as I told you, particularly this maize and soybean and other things, there is a negative growth trend that we can see. Having said that, let me come back to Bangladesh. I'll finish very quickly in 5 minutes. That Bangladesh rice or production situation in the 3 seasons still continues to rise, and it has gained a momentum really, with difficulties, particularly this year. More or less we have been able to maintain the level of production that we had last year. It has been a problem for the producer of the farmers to cope up with the increasing cost. But at any cost, they had to do it really, certainly with some reasonable support from the government. But this is so important for Bangladesh to keep this momentum up. My last slide is this. What are the ways forward for Bangladesh? I am not trying to give you a prescription, all-out prescription, nor is it intended. What I am trying to provoke is to encourage you to give your feedback or comment if you have. I'll be very happy to respond to your queries if you have really, and if time permits. The first thing is that domestic production looks okay. That's what BBS shows. And if you look at the government stock, it's reasonably good at the moment. The 1.8 million tons of food now is the stock in October. On the 20th of October. That's good. I mean, 1.8. Particularly at a time when our second main staple rice crop harvest has started now, the main almond season. So we can be reasonably comfortable. And my rice scientist from the Research Institute, Biri, confirms that contrary to a gloomy picture right at the beginning of this planting season in July, August, when drought was prevailing, long spell drought was prevailing, causing delay in planting of almond, then this hottest month later on led to an increased photosynthesis of the plant, which took advantage of the grain filling, and that ultimately resulted in a good harvest of almond, which has compensated quite a bit of loss that we might have incurred in the previous Boro crop due to floods in Hawar, and also the rain and the storm surges during the harvest of almond. So that's another good thing. Then about the private stock at the farmers level, at the marketing intermediaries level, there is no data. I don't have any access to any data, nor have I have any survey of myself. Given time, let me see what we could do. But my hunch is that when rice price is going up, and when frequent cautionary note and warnings are coming from the top levels, then the private producer, farmers, probably have a tendency to hold up the marketable surplus, which otherwise could have come to the market. So I am not that worried about that, really. Fine. Worry is about the urban population, some 30 million. I have sympathy for that, but that's a different analysis that we must keep in mind. Okay, so what are the strategic choices then? I quickly run. First of all, keep up with this current momentum of rice production. That's very crucial for food security of these 180 million people. But for that, you harness the technological advantage. Bangladesh has the comparative advantage of technology. It has got smart varieties, smart agronomic practices. But the challenge is the increasing cost of diesel, fertilizer, and the chemicals and pesticides. Okay, the second is to pursue a combined policy of fertilizer, diesel plus feed cost support. It's a combined policy that I run. Why? In order to protect the farmers' incentive structure. But if their incentive structure falls, then there will be long run damage might have been caused to this momentum that has been created. That's very crucial to understand. That we, the urban consumers, are hard hit, particularly the lower income. Full sympathy for them. But let us not do anything which will penalize the producers really, just on the plea that keep the food grain prices low. That's not the reality. In the long run, we'd like to see that agriculture, more specifically rice production, keeps up at the profitable incentive level. And for that, what we could do, okay, the question of subsidy that I mentioned a little while ago, that it is going on. But subsidy is not the panacea. It brings with it inefficiency as well. We understand that. So the other front we would like to prescribe that in order to keep these incentive prices at the market, we have to cautiously decide that how much this country needs to import. Not only rice, but also probably the other agricultural commodities. And in order to be able to do your judgment that how much to import at a particular point in time, you have to have access to very credible statistics of production. That is something we have not done always very well, really. Let us accept that. So that is something without a good production statistics, it's not possible to calculate the import, really. And lastly, I would say we have some other long-term strategic things also. We should think very carefully. Since we have comparative advantage of rice production in terms of import parity, we don't have any advantage, comparative advantage, of exporting rice, really. We haven't learned that yet. Maybe time may come, we'll see. But at the moment, we have comparative advantage in rice production. So let us bank on that. We have the technology, we have the skill, we have the scientists, we have 16.5 million farm families who know the rice production technology very well, really. So let us bank on that, and let us then gradually substitute this rice-based food system for wheat-based food that we have been used to, really. This country, how long can continue and sustain importing some, how many? 6 to 7 million tons of wheat every year because for this growing population. I am not against wheat. We love that. But the point is, Bangladesh grows only 1 million tons at best. And our science community tells us that at best you can grow another 2 lakhs. So 1.2 million tons at best. Why do you grow? So therefore, reducing this dependence on wheat could be a strategy. Look at Japan. Some 10, 20 years ago, when a group of Japanese colleagues visited me at Bangladesh Agriculture University while I was Vice Chancellor there, they came up with only gifts, packets of gifts, and full of foods and beverages, all made out of rice flour. And nowadays, if you go to the internet, you see rice soup, rice flour, rice noodles, rice cake, what not. So that is the job of our food industry to come up, really, and then bring up this kind of issue. Let us forget this war or anything. One day, definitely, world will be free of war. But then dependence on import of wheat all the time for a growing population is something that we have to reckon with very carefully. I think wheat-based, and then also diversify to this more nutritious food like fish and poultry, where my colleague from Aftab is here. Probably he will elaborate on this subject. And finally, I would say it is not always the government that would do everything, but this smart private sector is here to contribute, and I believe it would be our strategy also to make this private sector the active partner to this long journey of development in general and food security in particular. Thank you very much indeed. I would love to hear from you. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sattar Mandal, for such an insightful and a very compelling scenario of Bangladesh food security status, and for offering some immediate as well as medium-term strategies how to address these challenges. Thank you again, sir. Now I request my old friend, Fazlur Rahim Khan of Islam Group of Agribusiness to make some comments and observations. By the way, before Mr. Khan starts, perhaps if you have questions for Professor Sattar Mandal, this may not be a bad idea to just jot it down before you forget, because we will have a fairly long Q&A session, maybe about 20 minutes. Mr. Khan, please.
Good evening. Assalamu alaikum. I am not an economist like Dr. Sattar Mandal. Professor Sattar Mandal is a very respected person in this country. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll read out something. Then I would like to highlight in some areas where I see there are some solutions for Bangladesh for food security. Recently, Bangladesh has readjusted its population number. It is probably 176 million people. And Bangladesh is predominantly an agricultural country where agriculture sector is playing a significant role in ensuring sustainable food security and creating employment opportunities for the country's economic development. Agriculture, with 70% of the land area devoted to cultivation, is the main occupation of the 40% of the population, especially the rural population. Agriculture has become a major economic driver in Bangladesh, contributing 11.5% of the national GDP. Agriculture in Bangladesh is heavily dependent on weather, and the entire harvest can be wiped out in a matter of hours when cyclones hit the country. It's very important for us. So what is about the food security? If you see what is the food security as defined by the United Nations Committee on World Food Security means that all people all the times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their food preferences and dietary needs for an active and healthy life. Despite food sufficiency in food production, about 20.5% of the total population is living below the national poverty line. This is due to the political prosperity, mass-level corruption, inverse weather condition, natural disaster, and impact of global climate change in Bangladesh. The key indicators of food security of Bangladesh are as follows. According to the Food Security Index, GFSI 2022, Bangladesh is ranked 18th among 113 countries globally by scoring 54 out of 100. As per a report of the World Food Programme, country profile, 40 million people, 1/4 of the population almost, remain food insecure, and 11 million suffer from acute hunger. FAO mentioned in its report the state of food security and nutrition in the world 2022 shows that 11.4% of the Bangladesh total population is undernourished. 10.7% is in severe food insecurity, while 31.7% faces moderate or severe food insecurity. This is the major portion of the population who are now at a vulnerable situation for the price hike of the food at this moment in Bangladesh. And these people, this chunk of people who are the main driver for economic development. that we are seeing that they are struggling in buying their food at this moment. Russian invasion of Ukraine caused a massive impact on the global supply chain, hampering the flow of goods, huge cost increasing and creating disaster of food shortage all around the world. Ukraine and Russia both play a major role in global food supply market. There are net exports of several of the leading crops such as wheat, maize, barley, and vegetable oil. Together, Russia and Ukraine exports nearly a third of the world wheat and barley, more than 60% of its sunflower oil, and a big supplier of corn. Russia's war in Ukraine is preventing grain from leaving the breadbasket of the world and making food more expensive across the globe. The impact of post-COVID-19 pandemic and then conflict of Russia-Ukraine war both have put Bangladesh in a vulnerable situation. Bangladesh is also passing tough time due to the conflict through significant disruption of supply chain. This is the main cause for this problem, the supply chain disruption. In importing essential foods, grains, maize and cereal, and essential raw materials, trade imbalance dramatically, fuel price shocks, rising inflation, and global dollar crisis. The war in Ukraine has significantly affected Bangladesh in many ways. The supply chain has been disrupted. The feed industry, which is the inputs for the protein industry actually, taking enormous challenges as import shortage and fluctuation of international trade price for essential raw materials and feed additives, shortage of essential fertilizers, NPK, edible oil and fuel costs, and also a new thing that we are seeing in this world is the presence of speculators. They're hoarding the food grains. Again, this is increasing the cost, and sometimes even it is not available. If you want to open the LC, it is not available in the market, in the international market. This is a very alarming situation for us. Bangladesh is highly dependent on import of essential commodities, wheat, maize, and cereals. The crisis is going to be more deepened in the coming days, where most of the countries are used to a single grain as major food such as wheat or rice. Bangladesh is consuming both items. Although Bangladesh is steadily increasing the rice production, wheat production is still far behind. According to USDA, the country produced 1.13 million around, and wheat last year, which is only 15% of the annual demand of Bangladesh, and Bangladesh imports more than 85% of wheat. According to Bangladesh, World Trade Organization, Bangladesh is the 5th largest wheat importer in the world, and the economy is highly dependent on India, Russia, Ukraine for food grain. But due to the conflict of Russia-Ukraine, wheat supply in the global market became disrupted. Bangladesh failed to buy the grains from Russia and Ukraine as a result of war, crisis, and highest price increase in the global market. Later, Bangladesh shifted to India for export of major portion of wheat, but after a few months, we have observed that India has also banned all exports of wheat due to the local shortage. As a result, flour price in Bangladesh retail markets skyrocketed, and the consumer shifted to rice and to corn. The situation has created additional and extreme pressure on the domestic rice market. Total annual demand of maize is estimated 9 million metric ton. The feed industry needs nearly about 5 million metric ton maize to meet the local feed market demand. Rest is using for making starch and human consumption indirectly. Despite maize and soybean 17 to 18 ingredients are required to produce feed for poultry, aqua, and cattle. The animal feed industry are heavily dependent on import of all raw materials except one or two items. But Russia-Ukraine war caused huge jump in raw material prices, up to, in some cases, 123%. In the global market, the higher raw material prices have not only affected the feed industry, but also the supply chain of chicken, eggs, fish, milk. Around 20% of the feed production has dropped by feed millers due to high raw material prices in the international market. Hence, the production of chicken, eggs, other types of meat and fish declined due to the high feed prices. This ultimately caused a price hike in the retail market, so the end consumers are struggling to buy their foodstuffs, proteins, especially the proteins. The situation continues, further increase will take place in the chicken and egg prices. That will lead to shortage of protein supply and employment. It has been observed that substantial quantity, 20 to 20% of corn is mixed with wheat flour, which is known as a blended flour. The more maize is being used with wheat flour, as the wheat price has gone very high and unavailability in the market. The situation is also putting indirect pressure on the animal feed industry. Ukraine were also accountable for 75% of the world sunflower export. The conflict of both countries has increased the price of sunflower oil in the international market, and the price hike has led to a further increase in the entire vegetable oil market. Across the globe, as a result, vegetable oil prices were up to 140%. The soybean price were up to 90%. September 22 USDA report. Bangladesh imports vegetable oils in the form of raw items, palm oil and soybean oil, and also imported oil seeds, rapeseed and soybeans that processed domestically. Indonesia supplies 80% of the Bangladesh palm oil import. Argentina accounts for about 2/3 of Bangladesh soybean import. As export of sunflower oil disrupted, uncertainty afterwards, trade restrictions was imposed by both countries, Indonesia and Argentina. At the early stage of Russia-Ukraine war, the situation was created higher price high of edible oil in Bangladesh, and it is continuously increasing. Even today, the price of soybean has been increased 13 taka per liter. According to the USD, Bangladesh consumes approximately 6 billion metric tons of chemical fertilizer annually, of which 80% are imported. The four major imported fertilizers in Bangladesh are urea, triple superphosphate, diammonium phosphate, and muriate of potash. Russia and Ukraine war, Russia and Belarus were the dominant supplier of MOP in Bangladesh. Russia-Ukraine war caused in MOP supply shortage and higher domestic price of fertilizer in the upcoming Rabi crop seasons, resulting in a lower input used could reduce rice production. This may lead to increased demand for rice import if we fail to import the fertilizers from the international market. The ongoing war is driving up the cost of fuel, which is in turn increasing the cost of transportation of food to the market. Such increases are passed on to the consumers, who may really have adverse difficulty buying enough food for their families. There are some solutions for that which we can discuss on the question and answer. There is a solution for us. We should not be very pessimist. We can be optimist if we can work together with the private sector, the government sector, and the policymakers. If we work together, definitely it is possible to come up from this situation which will be prevailing. Hope it should not prevail. Another issue is important, that climatic change, international climatic change, is also disrupting the whole agro business all over the world, agro production. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Fazlur Rahim Khan, a leader in the agro sector of Bangladesh, for providing us a pretty good scenario of both the input and output market of the agricultural sector. It's good that both the academic person and the business person is not that pessimistic. There is hope. That's the good news. Now I'm going to invite online Mr. Rajesh Singh, who actually I get to know him a bit, but last year, a very delightful person. Let me again repeat what he likes to say. I did say the introductory remark. He's a farmer by birth, manufacturer by choice. I take it back. Farmer by birth, manufacturer by chance, and entrepreneur by choice. Mr. Rajesh Singh, please. Hi, Rajesh. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Najmul. Am I audible? The internet seems to be a little low either at this end or that end. Could somebody confirm?
Yeah, you are audible, but your picture is still. Now it's better.
Okay, so my apologies. I joined the conference in the due time, but I was unable to hear the other panelists, Mr. Mandal and other people I was not really clear in what they were talking about. But most of it I got the gist because I just heard in broken bits and pieces. Also, the graphs were very commendable. So that is the possibility that I could understand what exactly the trend is, how exactly it is going. So possibly I can contribute in that. Greetings, Mr. Hines, respected panelists, attendees and members of Swedish Government Foundation for Freedom. I thank the Foundation for providing an opportunity for a discussion on the events affecting the world in crisis situation, especially where it is related to food and agri-communities. My name is Rajesh Singh. I live in a small village in the state of Bihar, India. I am associated with food, agriculture, and people involved in our agrarian society in a very, very close proximity with. South Asia holds 1/4 of the world's population. A very large part of this populace is engaged in agrarian and food industry. Unlike the West, this occupation is more subsistence than industry. It is this reason why the Ukrainian crisis, though has expedited the migration process, but not affected the South Asia like it has affected the West. Now, unlike the rest of the West and the affected the Western economies, because this 1/4 of the South Asian community has been engaged and has been low at the bottom of the pyramid, a lot, as per my opinion, has not really affected. Now, the whole world, though it has definitely made changes at the agrarian society, but because it is the agrarian society is more to do with subsistence, the big numbers, the large numbers do not really affect us as they have affected the West. The whole world has already been through a miserable crisis, namely COVID-19. Now, and its effects and damages will last much longer than a decade to resolve. Last thing the world needs is a war, where major powers of the world are involved. The utopian idea of self-sufficiency is impractical. We are a connected world and we need less control, less moderation and more facilitation. There are ripple effects to every action that the controllers seek. Effects that they can't control. So everybody tries to organize things at the larger end, but sometimes it really doesn't work that way. Russia and Ukraine together are major suppliers of food, fuel and fertilizers. Approximately more than 20% of these three things are produced in just two economies. So if they go to war, the entire supply chain gets into a crisis. It was evident that any adventure to change the geopolitical balance by the West, I'm saying pre the inclusion of NATO or trying to get Ukraine into NATO, or maybe they have an independent choice, that itself was, this had to arrive here. You know, balance by the West, developed economies will have its repercussions. That's a natural thing. Fortunately, in a nutshell, the South Asia is not so badly affected as the West itself. The US has its worst inflation in last many years, and UK has its worst living standards in many years. The developed economies have a different aspiration and the developing or underdeveloped nations of the South Asia. So whatever the priorities are there for the developed economies, or even for the West for that matter, is not the same as what the South Asia has. South Asia has different aspirations, as in large numbers. Yes, GDP is an indicator, inflation is a number, and all these things are, prices going up, they're all numbers. But because majority of the population, still more than half of the population, is living below the poverty line or just about in the lower middle class, and they are affected, they are directly associated with agriculture and subsistence. So they are just living either by the state or by the land itself, or growing their own food. Now this is, say in the West or the US or the in the European nations, what happens, the farmers, the percentage of farmers who are affected are very less. So maybe 2% or 3% of the Western world is engaged in the farming industry. But in India, or for that matter in South Asia, largely almost 6 or 7 countries, all of us, we have a similar background, and we all go back to, we are somehow associated with agriculture directly, or food industry. So the figures might come from different industries altogether, but when it comes to livelihoods and people or affecting lives, the numbers are much larger associated with agriculture than any other industry. The Ukraine crisis has assumably affected the Western economies much more than the South Asian economies. Now, India and China have both remained neutral to the crisis. India has responsibly taken their own side. I guess that was the most, they did not really get into, they knew that their food, fuel and fertilizers, the supply, and they have a cordial relationship with Russia, and the rest of the South Asian countries have also done the same, including Pakistan, which was already, which has an affiliation with America, but in this case they have stayed neutral. So India has responsibly taken their own side and continued purchase of fuel, food and fertilizers from Russia. So they have somewhat managed to keep their head up. India is a provider of oil and food with neighbors, namely Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan and Sri Lanka. So not taking the cue from the Western imposed sanctions safeguard not just India, but these neighboring nations as well. In fact, to help at the time of crisis, India has also extended a line of credit to these neighboring nations. Now that is a responsible nation. Besides affecting its own cost, India is also aware that there are smaller countries around it which will get affected. Now the entire oil to Nepal or Bhutan or most of it to Bangladesh or Sri Lanka goes through India. So they cannot act irresponsibly. They cannot decide which will affect rest of the South Asia. So Pakistan has had its own financial issues and they did the same in their interest. The Sri Lanka crisis, though, had nothing to do with the Ukrainian crisis. So it's my opinion as a farmer in the back of an underdeveloped area here at Bihar, India, that the worst is not over for the West as yet. It is going to be very difficult for the middle and lower class of people living in the Western economies. They are going to face difficulties. Fortunately, they have the financial instruments with them. And financial instruments are being used by large major economies to tackle these kind of situations. So like US, obviously, although they are under inflation, but they are in control of financial instruments and possibly they can go ahead with it. But eventually, it is it's somewhat it feels that it will catch up at some time, because something has to be, the money has to be backed by something hard and real, which is not happening in the financial sector right now. So as far as the South Asian economies are concerned, which largely constitutes of 2 billion people to feed, most of these economies are based on imports. They have been long colonized by the West, and they have their own energy concerns. The West is moving towards alternate energy source, and we have a long way to go towards that. Besides the analytical view of the crisis and its effects, it is important to understand the effect of the general populace. So it's more, if we don't really look at the numbers, the large figures going up and down and how changes and differences are happening, you have to look at the common man right on the floor. How is this entire episode, this crisis affecting the common man, the agrarian society at large? So we can see trends as in dark figures and data and all that, but most of the time data are manipulated, so to go deeper and deeper into data, that just might not affect. But if you go to a common man and if you actually see how they are behaving and how it is affecting their life, most of the pulse that you need to feel, you can do it right away, right outside the door. Look at your vegetable vendor or the person who supplies your eggs, or for that matter meat or vegetables or whatever. You will be able to figure out how the trade is being affected. Yeah. Now, the cost of farming has gone up substantially. The incomes are impossible to gauge. So most of the people who are engaged in farming, that includes me, we are not here to grow for profit. That's the human side of it. So possibly the large numbers that the wheat and all that is coming from Ukraine or Russia, just simply because it is industry there. It is not because the farmers are getting affected there. So it's a very small populace of people who are engaged into farming. But in South Asia, most of the people are engaged into farming. They are able to grow food for themselves. So it doesn't really affect us directly. Only fact, what happens is that when we grow, say, wheat or a similar product which is supposed to be supplied to the rest of the other consumers, if a government starts capping, then the farmers are not able to get their due profits. Those profits are basically used to take care of their medical bills or other aspirations. That does not really happen because, as it is, we already have a PDS system in most of the countries where the government is already supplying grains and other food, even for that matter, fertilizer and fuel at a subsidized cost. So they are fiddling with economies anyway, and people are living on their land to safeguard the land and to just take care of their livelihoods that they have been doing it for ages and ages. So until unless this famine is, although this famine or this paucity is man-made, most of it, but it has not really affected the South Asia simply because we have sided or we have taken a neutral stand. We just maintained our supply chain. The cost of farming has gone up substantially. The incomes are impossible to gauge. In next few years, the percentage of marginal farmers will reduce drastically. Corporates and large organizations will foray into agriculture. That is the trend that has already been set in last couple of decades. This COVID and the Ukrainian crisis is only going to expedite the entire process. It is just going to happen faster. GM crops, which were kind of nobody knew which side to take, whether the organic stuff might not be able to feed the world and GM crop is needed, and there are people on both sides of the fence, but they will find a way. This is the time when these kind of troubles happen, corporates come in, and then slowly there is a threat that there could be a food crisis, there's a climate change. So when there is a crisis, slowly and people sneak into these kind of arrangements. So I see that in a couple of years, GM crops would be a reality in South Asia largely, most of it. The intermediaries and traders are still safe. They have not been affected badly because they buy at a certain price, certain cost, and they sell with their certain profits. Yes, there has been erratic situations of storage and supply chain issues, but because even corporates have largely gotten into associations with farming communities and the governments at the other end and the food sector as well.
Rajesh, sorry
I
to
think
interrupt.
the government,
Could you kindly wrap up in 2 minutes? Thank you.
I can't hear you.
Yeah, Rajesh, if you could kindly wrap up in 2 minutes, because we'd like to have a few question and answers session, few question and answer after your presentation.
Is that
2 minutes.
I
2
can't,
minutes.
it wasn't clear, Najmul.
2 minutes.
Excuse me?
2 minutes more, if you could wrap it up.
Okay. Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm done. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so the COVID in the Ukrainian crisis has expedited the evolution that was already taking place. This is already a strong pressure to allow GM crops in the region, showing the face of the crisis. We need to be self-sufficient. That's the irony, that the seeds will now be imported. Now, there's a changing demography that is evident at the grassroots. Now, as of now, I think we have averted the crisis. We had towed the western line, we would have surely been in a crisis, which has not happened till now. And I think, I don't think we have a food crisis right now. We have a different kind of issues which will come into being. But that will take a couple of years. Both, it is not just the Ukrainian issues, it's also because of the COVID and other situations, but there'll be large-scale migration back to the city, and so there will be demographic changes, mostly. Otherwise, I think we are safer than the rest of the West, because we are not in a financial mess. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend Rajesh. Always good to hear from you. But don't leave us yet. We do have a question and answer session. Big hand for Mr. Rajesh Singh. I don't want to take more time what he tried to explain, but it was quite clear, clear dichotomy between the challenges between the developed countries and South Asia. Thank you again, Rajesh. Now we are going to go to that last session, which is the question and answer session. The floor is open. Just raise your hand, and there are enough volunteers to. Frank Hoffman will be the first to ask a question. May I request, just give us a minute. Let's kind of huddle back here. Request, please identify yourself, just the name, and if that's optional, if you want to identify the institution or organization you are affiliated with, it fine. If not, just the name would be suffice. And be specific who this question is for. There are three possible persons who can respond: Dr. Sattar Mandal, Mr. Fazlur Rahim Khan, or my friend Rajesh Singh. Frank Hoffman, please.
Okay, yeah, Najmul, you said it. Frank from the Naumann Foundation in Delhi. I've got a question to Mr. Khan. So you sounded rather optimistic. Hello? At the end, saying that this crisis can be tackled by a better cooperation in government and private sector. Now, you as an entrepreneur, what are your 1, 2 major points that you'd like the government to tackle, or what are your demands from the corporate sector to the government in this situation?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yes, we believe if there is a crisis, there is an opportunity. What we are seeing, we were over-dependent on wheat production. That has caused a lot of problems for our
বলো রাজেশ সিং কিছু শুনতে পাচ্ছে না
What we see, there is an opportunity for us. We can solve our problem.
Hello. Yes. We can. Okay. There is a lot of opportunity that we are seeing. We are observing that Bangladesh can produce highest per acre or per hectare yield of maize. This is around 11 ton per hectare, which would probably the second highest yield in the world. And in the last 25 years, from zero production of maize, Bangladesh is producing around 6 billion tons. If we can focus on the production of maize in Bangladesh, that will create an opportunity for the food security for not only for Bangladesh, we will be able to export the maize to the neighboring countries in future. It is possible, and I believe that is possible. What we have to do here, we have to look into the good policy of developing the seeds for the maize. If we can focus on developing the maize seed, then it will not take long time. And another problem, another issue is we are facing the climatic change all over the world. And wheat needs minimum water. We are also over-dependent on rice production, and rice needs a lot of water. This is creating a desertification in the northern part of Bangladesh, which is very suitable for producing the maize. So maize could be answer for the cereal, and there are different type of maize. Maize could be used for the animal feed as well as the human feed, food. On top of that, if we can focus on the rice bran oil, this will also help to reducing our dependency on the importing of the oil seed and the oil. And rice bran oil, Bangladesh is producing around 40 million tons of rice, from which we can almost cover our whole requirements of oil if there is a good policy, and where the private sector has to be included with the government for formulating all the policies for these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. Next, gentlemen, identify yourself and then ask the question. And who is it for?
Hello, thank you. My name is Asif Ahnaf. I'm the Finance Secretary from E-Commerce Association of Bangladesh, also Director of Foshol.com, a agri-tech company. So my question is for the panelists as well as from the Bangladesh perspective, our keynote speaker. Likely we are saying the Ukraine-Russia war have an impact on our the pricings in agricultural means and tools as well. But how far is it only depending on the Ukraine war, or it actually in Bangladesh current circumstance over global issues also impacting, because everything have a price hiking also, not only like this, as well as the other impacts from our LC for importing, everything is going close. So what is the main reason you find out?
Who is this question targeting? Sir.
Okay. As to whom?
Okay, Professor Mondal is suggesting maybe take another question or two and then.
Taritos.
Yeah, okay. Next, anybody else? I saw Mr. Tenjing over here, my colleague. Tenjing.
Hello, my name is Tenzin. I'm from FNF South Asia, India. My question is for Dr. Mondal. In your presentation, you have shown us the correlation of crude oil to the food crisis. And my question would be, if the renewable energy generating by Bangladesh is more, will it correlate with the current food crisis? Because the Bangladesh is producing, as per the last report, only 0.5 exajoules of renewable energy. That is, if you compare with the other South Asian countries, it's quite low. For example, Sri Lanka is producing 3 times more than Bangladesh. So I just want to ask you if there's any correlation between the renewable energy to the current food crisis.
Thank you. For the efficiency, yeah, if it is for Professor Mondal, he's going to take all the question and he'll try to give the response.
Can I?
Just 6 minutes, sir. Dr. Zaidi Sattar, and after that you, of course. Microphone to Dr. Sattar, please. Could you move a bit fast?
Thank you. My question or observation is with respect to Dr. Sattar Mondal's presentation. Very, very insightful, deep insights coming from an expert. So I really thought I have to make an observation or ask a question. My take, if I understand you correctly, is one of relief, in the sense that I think what you're telling us is, first of all, as far as food production is concerned, we are in good shape this year. As far as government stocks are concerned, there's reasonably good stock. As far as private stocks are concerned, you said probably better. So all in all, in the immediate term, if I understand you correctly, there is no food crisis as such. However, when you go to the strategic options, you've got some various suggestions, and one of which I'm trying to understand. You're talking about a combined policy of support in the areas of fertilizer, diesel, and what was that, feed cost. So you've got, so essentially, are you talking about, adding, there is already, huge subsidy on fertilizer. Are you talking about more subsidies going into these areas? And what does it mean for the budget? There's a huge subsidy in the budget. And when it comes to debt servicing this year, with the exchange rate having, depreciated 20% already, the extra budget cost is something like, extra 4,000 crore taka of, budgetary provision will be needed in addition to the 20,000 crore that was costing the debt servicing part. So I'm looking for some
Thank you, Zaidi bhai.
clarification on that.
The gentleman over there, unfortunately we don't have too much more time. 2 more questions. One from the gentleman over there, and then I have to.
Thank you. In view of the lateness of the hour, I'll be very brief. My porichoy is that I worked for the government for many, many years, home and abroad, and now I'm involved in many ways with German, the biggest and the largest chamber in Bangladesh, and I'm also associated with many other organizations. My question is an open question. I liked Mr. Rajesh, who's on the screen. He made very pertinent point that India is doing very well. And I understand the food prices and other prices have not shot up as much as it has done. It has in Bangladesh. Well, I'll not go into the pricing because, Dr. Zaidi Sattar, who is a very eminent personality in this field, has spoken. And I will just make a query that none of our speakers have reflected on the growth of potatoes in Bangladesh. Amra alu eto grow kori. What is the value we add to our food chain, number one. And the potatoes can be converted to many usage. I will not go into detail, so we all know about it. So does it help our food chain? The thing you mentioned that we are very good in producing rice. That's a good news. And we are quite satisfied with the production. The concern is wheat. Now the question is, well, I don't know how to use this word. The home staff, they all prefer to have rice in the morning. So it's good news that I can go ahead with the rice because the price is stable on the rice. So that's good news and they enjoy that. Rice in the morning, rice in the afternoon, rice. They want to eat rice whole day. So that's one thing I thought I'll just mention over here. And you know, there are many things which is happening in our agriculture. You see, the rice
Sir,
barn oil has
if you
been
could
very
just
productive.
wrap it up, please.
And
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just wrapping. So it seems that if there is a right policy from the authorities, I'm not using the word government, but the private sector is also an authority. So if there's a right decision and policy, I don't think so there should be a serious food concern for Bangladesh. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, could you just identify yourself for our documentation?
Well, my name is Shahid Akhtar. I worked for the government for many years, home and abroad. And I also associated with the biggest and the largest chamber in Bangladesh. There's the Bangladesh German Chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Carsten Klein.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me, first of all, make me a clear statement. If this terrible war from Russia to Ukraine would not have happened, South Asia and other countries, let's say like also in the African states and others, would not be in this terrible crisis. That is crystal clear. So answer number one must be to end this terrible war coming from Russia immediately. That is number one. And number two, I think we have to accept that there is, of course, a catalyst situation for also food production, agriculture, technology here in Bangladesh. That is perhaps a bit of a positive side effect. So perhaps, Professor, to you and to Mr. Singh, the question, what would be the three major key elements in order to make Bangladesh more independent from imports from relevant agricultural products? Is it politically, is it research-based, or is it on other technological questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Khan. Last question for this evening from my good tennis friend, Iqbal Hussain.
Thank you, Nazrul Bhai. Good evening. In fact, this is not my question. I'd like to take my privilege to introduce myself with Sattar sir. He's my direct teacher. Now I'm in police, sir. So I have to work with rural people, marginal people. And my English is so, I'm not at all fluent in English. I will try to express myself. Actually, to view your presentation, the main concentration is given on the few issues, especially on crude oil and how crude oil affect fertilization, irrigation, etc. And there are some local issues also, sir, especially mediators. I served in Nauga, which is the highest rice producer, producing district in the country. Unfortunately, in a vigor, it cost 18,600 for rice production. 18,600 taka. And farmer gate 19,600. The difference is 1,000, which is price of 2 burgers or 1 burger. And some other issues like transportation, labor cost, and there are some issues also reducing system loss. There are some technologies or some methods like irrigation, AFD or something like, and another is fertilization. We can suggest organic fertilization also. So we can reduce expenditure in this regard, and how our local issues can be addressed, and hard package of solutions. From your presentations, we are very much disappointed, sir. and under an existing situation, what package of solutions can be provided for our people. And thank you, sir. This is not my question. This is to take privilege to be introduced with you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Iqbal. That gentleman has been very, if it is very brief, just thank you. Go ahead. This is the last one.
Sure. Hello, I am Ashraf. I run a startup named Durjoy DSS. We are building retail stores in Bangladesh. So my question, I will keep it very brief to Mr. Fazle Karim Khan. As a successful entrepreneur in Bangladesh and in the food and commodity industry, do you have any plan, any aim or budget to allocate for companies or startups who are working in the emerging channel or who are working in the channels which were not practiced before? Thus, working with those companies or startups, that might open a new opportunity for us, if there is any comment from your side onto this.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks to all those who have asked questions. So may I follow the following route? Since most of Rajesh, can you hear me? No, you can't.
I think you are addressing me, but I can't hear you. I can see you.
While we work on the technology, please do. I'll ask Mr. Khan to go ahead and make his observations. We're working on the technology. Over to you, Raj.
Thank you. Yes, we are looking for such type of endeavor. Definitely, as we want to reduce and rationalize the supply chain. We want to sell our product directly to consumers. So you are most welcome. I think, and I believe almost all of the companies who are involved in agriculture business will be welcoming you. You contact us. Thank you.
Sorry, sir. Rajesh, can you hear me now? No luck? Rajesh? Sorry. We'll let Professor Mondal give his observations, and if you're lucky, we'll get back to Rajesh. Sir.
Okay, thank you. I know we are struggling with time. I've tried to be as precise as possible, but we be careful and attentive to your queries and questions. I like that. Thank you very much indeed. First one is whether this crisis is due to Ukraine war and anything. Well, I would not delve into it very deeply, but what I would like to say is that no, it's not the only cause. It's a combination of causes, and most important are these global disruption that was caused initially with this COVID-19 pandemic, and then that was followed by this war. So that aggravated really. And then second is this dollar value appreciation against many currencies. So that created constraint for the capacity to import, and not only the food but also the inputs towards to production. Your second one is the renewable energy. That's a very interesting question. I have taken it very seriously. Bangladesh has underscored a very high priority to renewable energy, particularly the solar pump and panels really. Firstly for household level, and now trying to connect it with the irrigation pumps really. Second one is I think Jaideep Bhai's. I would like to thank you very much, Jaideep Bhai. And thank you for your compliment. Okay, subsidy. I know I know how thorny issue is it really, but let me also share my recent calculations. When the diesel prices were increased in July or August, my immediate calculation was, and that was published in Daily Stars and other, that for an average size shallow tube well pump owner, the pumping cost increased 10,100 Bangladesh taka just because of 34 taka increase per liter. So my humble submission was, then how do you compensate or ensure profit margin for these pump owners really? There are two ways. One is that you reimburse this cost through subsidy, or if you can. How you do that, that's a different issue. I will come back, or I won't come back now really. You subsidize, okay. The second one is that you allow the food grain price or the paddy price to go up. My rough calculation was that 1,500 taka per month of paddy at the harvest would somehow or other would create some modest margin really. But if that happens, what would happen to rice market? Because people don't eat paddy, they eat rice. So processing is involved. Household level processing by Deki, or even the Engelbar husking machines are no longer there. It's the whole rice milling is taken over by 16,000 total rice mill, and about 1,000 or 100 and 1,000 or 1,500 semi-auto and auto rice millers who are now combining dryers and all kinds of processors really. The rice market is under their hand. So what would you then say? That 1,500 taka paddy per month would mean what really in the processed rice miller? That's a serious question about food security. I don't have answer, but then what do you do? So my easy calculation was that allow some how many did I say? About 2,000 crores Bangladesh taka as a kind of reimbursement fund really. Like the one that IMF ultimately approved, you know, the food shock, what they call it? Food shock window of IMF grant. So let us, Zaidibhai, let us work together and call it diesel energy shock reimbursement fund, or I leave it to you really. Something like that, depend on your capacity. Okay. Third one is the potato. I love that really. Why not? Potato. But alu emon ek jinish Bangladeshe, potato er emon ek jinish je rice er kono alochonate. If you mix up any rice discussion with potato consumption, many of the ministers have lost their seats really. So I am very careful about that really. But I agree with you, the potato has got a very big chance really. By the way, I love potato, eating potato very much. Okay. Your second was is rice. I love that really, that you like. And in Philippines, I spent about 2 months in my early age really. And then these 2 months, I ate only rice with no curry, only rice and tomato sauce. I didn't die. At the end of the day, I put on 2 kilograms of weight really. So I love. If you eat rice, you do the most justice to Bangladeshi rice farmers. But take care of your carbohydrate and your diabetes. Thank you. 4 is that war must stop. I like this really. Why not? We also say equally that war must stop. Who? Someone like me at mid-70s of age, really 70 years age, have seen personally the ravages, atrocities, and inhuman activities of the then Pakistan occupation army during our liberation war in 1971. I was just a young lecturer of university. I have seen that really. So I would also say war must stop. That creates, if not anything, any disruption is cannot be accepted. I agree. Last is three major key elements you asked for. You give me a homework task really as a good professor. That what are the three key elements for Bangladesh? Anybody's three key elements will differ from others really. My quick understanding, I may not be correct, but I have to pass this exam that you have set for me. I'm very happy to respond. Number one, I would think, for Bangladesh, acceleration of this agricultural productivity that has started should continue. And for that, we must look beyond the present horizon. We must look at the smart and precision agriculture, which is robot and sensor based. Now these private industries are coming so that the conversion ratio between fertilizer and paddy, conversion ratio between the feed and then poultry meat or the eggs can be enhanced, reducing per unit cost. So that's the tomorrow's solution, number one. Number two is the market. We have to deal with the market very smartly also. It's not only production. And when I talk about market, I also say it's not the primary product market. It's the value addition and the processing industry. As I mentioned, this food industry to come to deal with rice really and substitute rice flour for wheat flour as long as it's possible. And then the third key element is that continue this support or probably enhance this support to the R&D system, research and development of agriculture. Our national institutions have done a wonderful job. I would love to see them continue with the further support and continuation. And there would be probably better use or utilization of research findings and recommendations also in the larger policy platforms. Thank you very much indeed.
Rajesh, can you hear me? Perseverance is a virtue, but I don't think it's working.
Yeah, hi, I can hear you.
Thank
I can
you.
hear you
Rajesh,
loud and clear.
okay. Please, 2-3 minutes if you could make some general comments from whatever you heard, or especially if you heard the question that was addressed to you. Over to you, Rajesh.
No, I did not hear the question. I could just make out the FNF boss. He had some emotional upsurge, I guess, because his hand movement, I didn't know what was it regarding. I can understand that being a German, it's difficult to see war. But then the things that you can't control. And apparently what has happened is with South Asia, Southeast Asia, because of this agrarian and the topics being specific to the agrarian sector, the agriculturists and people who are involved in this industry, they don't know borders. They don't understand borders. So the farmers all over the world are the same. They are the ones who are affected most of the time by somebody else trying to decontrol or trying to take control or change the equations. But we are just the effects. There's nothing that the farming community can do to change the political situations anywhere.
Thank you, Rajesh. I think that basically concludes our technical session. I hope at least I have learned a little bit more in the last 1 hour than I have for a long time. Sincere thanks to Rajesh Singh from India, Mr. Fazlur Rahim Khan from Bangladesh, and a very special thanks to Professor Sattar Mondal. Can we have a round of applause for them? Thank you. Salwa Jahan, take over.
between you and dinner. So I'll try to be short and sweet. And, well, since it's a vote of thanks, I would first like to give thanks. And I think the first person I would also like to thank is the captain, because he not only troubled waters. For 10 years, he has been instrumental in the great success with all of you, our partners. So please give a big hand to Dr. Najmul Hussain. I would, German embassy here, Mr. Jan Jaganowski, then of course our colleague from Germany, Charles de Vinage, our dear regional director for South Asia, Dr. Carsten Klein, and then of course also our esteemed panelists, Professor Dr. Sattar Mandal, Mr. Fazle Karim Khan, and I'm very sorry if I always say it wrong, I'm unfortunately not from the region, and then of course our Rajesh Singh, our expert from India. Now, before I let you all go for dinner, there are just some few things that have really struck with me, and I really learned a lot. And we had a discussion, you know, we talked about the Russian invasion into Ukraine and how that has exacerbated the crisis and how that has rippled across the whole world. And indeed, you know, while Bangladesh and South Asia might be quite well off in a certain, you know, frame, I think we all agree that this is actually quite huge challenges persist. And we really need to look at it and weather it. And while you're having your dinner, I would just like you to think about, you know, what do we do about that? I'm now talking to especially the crowd here in Bangladesh. You know, the Ukraine, the Russian invasion into Ukraine, the war in Ukraine could end overnight. And a lot of these issues, you know, wouldn't be as severe anymore. But as has been rightly pointed out, it's not only the Russian invasion into the Ukraine. We are talking about climate change. We are talking about renewables. We are talking about the diversification of the food supply. At the end of the day, food security is so much more. And I would just like to ask you to, you know, in a discussion with your friends or here at dinner, think about what can, you know, we talked about what can government do, what can private entities do. But